Hey everyone, Raptor Spank here, and today we have one of my favorite things to do, which is just like I record all of my win records and win rates and matches when I work on when I play ranked. So I always make a post on Twitter at the end of the season or not at the end of the season, when I hit Masters in the season, I make a post on Twitter and I post all those rates and all that because I just find it really interesting, really neat to see how decks did. It's funny sometimes a deck ends up being way better on my list than I expected and all that. So recently, with the last season and now this season, I've started doing a video for it because I was like, hey, I have this YouTube channel. Why don't I put this in a video instead of just putting this one little picture out on Twitter, or a couple of pictures on Twitter? So I personally love doing this video because it's really neat. I like the stats of it and all that. So hopefully you guys do too. But basically what we're going to be doing today is just talking about what decks I played on my way to Masters and how they did. So first off, the best deck ever of all time, IF Elusive's 100% win rate. Best deck ever. Everything else is just pales in comparison. So for those of you who are new, I play this every season. It's my thing. I have to play IF Elusives at least once. It's the first deck that ever got me to Masters. I really like the deck. As someone who played Affinity a lot in Magic, in Modern, I really like the synergistic aggro aspect of it. So it's a deck I really enjoy. So I play it every season. Last season, I think it was a 0% win rate. So it was low. Whatever it was low. But this season, I played one game when I hit Diamond, and I won. But yes, so this is the deck. It's not good. I don't recommend it. It's not great. Yes, I played Lulu in it, and I won. I actually won a lot in normals too. Funny enough, the Lulu buff a lot better than I expected. But I highly, highly would recommend not playing this deck. It's not good. It's not good, but it did get the 100%. Now on to actual competitive decks that had a 100% win rate. Again, there's three decks that have it. All of them are one game sample size. They would not be this high of a win rate otherwise. But Ezreal Draven, I only played one game, won that game. I'm very comfortable on the deck. I've played that deck so much in the past. I'm probably going to play it in the future as well this season. So, yeah, really good deck. Highly recommend it. It probably won't get you a 100% win rate, but it is very, very good. This is the list I was running, so yeah, it's still in a good spot now. I still highly recommend it for grinding because it can win a lot of matchups, even the bad ones. So there's not a ton of matchups where it's just like, this is unwinnable. The biggest ones being probably mid-range heavy decks I've always found to be kind of rough, but I suppose with Plaza Scout slowing itself down with Grand Plaza, that matchup is probably a lot better too. But yeah, this deck's it's a good one for grinding because you can win any matchup with it. Then the next 100% win rate deck, which is the most recent on the grind, Frostbite Midrange. I played the one game, I won the one game against Fizzlusives as well. Yeah, solid deck. Another really great deck for grinding because it can win a lot of matchups. Even the bad matchups, you put out so many 5-power units so quickly, even a bad matchup you can win just out of nowhere. So, yeah, and it's got Frostbite for a lot of the bad matchups. So, really good grinding deck because it's just going to steal you games out of nowhere, and it's just going to give you a pretty consistently good win rate. Not 100%, but yeah, I'm 71% on it right now, including Masters games, so it's still a really good deck. From there, we have 86% win rate, 7 games, TF Elise Go Hard. All of these are pre-nerf. I still think the deck is good. I would expect the win rate to be a lot lower, though. These were all before the Pack Your Bags nerf, so that's why the deck did so well. It was the best deck in the meta at the time. It's still a good deck, but it was the best deck. I expect the win rate to be a lot lower now. Obviously, that's why I dropped it. I figured it would be hurt quite a bit, let alone the fact I kind of want to play other decks. I've played a lot of Go Hard over the past couple of months, so I didn't really want to play a ton of it. And just in general, the games can be so slow, and that's not really my style. I like faster decks, faster games, so yeah, I didn't play it after the nerf, but still in a good spot. Definitely was a workhorse early in the season for that exact reason. Similar, 73% win rate, 11 games on Targon Plaza. I haven't played it since the meta check where I did an update on it. I'm not entirely sure why I stopped playing it, to be honest. I think I just really didn't have time to be playing other decks and doing On the Grind, so I had to drop it to play the next deck for On the Grind. But yeah, I think it's probably still a good deck right now, even. I think there's a lot of decks that aren't really prepared for what it does. The nerf to Plaza definitely is going to hurt it a bit, but it was kind of a deck where you didn't care as much about the health from Plaza. It was relevant with the Starry Scamps, but it was mostly there for just added value. So I could still see this deck being really strong even post nerf, and I would still keep the Plaza in that case. But yeah, it kind of just was a victim of the time. I had to drop it to play another deck to make a new episode for On the Grind. So yeah, I think it's still solid. I would probably expect the win rate to go down a little bit now without Plaza or with the Plaza nerf, but yeah, I still think it's probably a solid deck. It just might be towards the lower end of the positive win rate decks now. Now a deck that is very solid, I do highly recommend, and I do expect it to hold on to the spot. 67% win rate, 27 games on Fiora Shen. The deck is phenomenal. It's really good. I cannot recommend it enough. The deck is so good. It is one of the most consistent decks. It's been a staple of the meta and at the top or near the top for I don't even know how many months. It's been so long. They haven't nerfed anything out of this deck in ever, I think. To be quite frank, ever. They've never nerfed Fiora throughout the entire existence of the game since beta. They've never nerfed Shen. They've only buffed him. So yeah, this deck is so good. It's still good. It's still amazing. It doesn't use Plaza, so it wasn't hit by the nerf at all. This was the deck that got me to Masters. The very last game I played that got me to Masters was Fiora Shen into Plaza Scouts, and we have always been, and definitely post-nerf, still are the best mid-range deck in that matchup. Brightsteel Formation just absolutely dunks on other mid-range decks, especially Plaza Scouts, so yeah, that was a fairly easy game. Yeah, highly recommend this. If you take anything out of this video, it's that Fiora Shen is a phenomenal deck. Absolutely good for playing ranked and grinding up to Masters. Highly recommend it. I don't recommend any other deck on this list more than Fiora Shen, and I truly mean that. Now, a deck that has one less game, and that's why the win rate's different. 65%, 26 games, Fizz Elusives. This deck surprised me. It did a lot better than I expected. And after the On the Grind, its performance was kind of middling at that point, and I was like, I really think it's going to be better by the time of meta check, and boy, did it do so. And I've played it a bit since. I've played one game in Masters with it, won that game, so I guess if you want to lump that in, then it's up to the 67% win rate with Fiora Shen as well. I think I'd still probably favor Fiora Shen over Fizz Elusives, but both decks are really good for grinding right now. If you like aggro decks, Fizz Elusive's a decent spot to be. Obviously, Discard Aggro is a decent spot to be right now, too. But, yeah, Fizz Elusives really surprised me. It was awesome to play an S-tier version of Fizz. I love Fizz. I love Fizz in League. I love Fizz in this game. And getting to actually play him in Ranked and do well with him was... it was awesome. It was a really cool feeling. And just the whole aspect of, like, suit up on Elusives and all that. It basically was very close to the Elusive deck of old that I really loved, so very happy to play that deck. It was a lot of fun, definitely good. Similar win rate, 65%, 23 games. Bilgewater Burn, another aggro deck. That's been a staple of the meta since Rising Tides came out, more or less. It took a little while for it to really settle down and come to terms with what the list was, but yeah, deck is really good. It definitely was starting to fall off a bit. After the nerfs to Lee Sin, it might actually do better now, because that's what I was starting to have issues with, is I was losing to Lee Sin a lot with the deck, because the added early game of Zoe and Sparklefly really makes trouble for Bilgewater Burn, so I stopped playing it. I dropped it for that reason, because it was starting to stumble. The win rate was actually higher, and it was just starting to trend down. I think it's in a better spot now. The big problem being discard aggro's always been a struggle for that deck, because it really goes blow to blow, and they can usually outrace us. Unless we get like a turbo Gangplank turn 5 swing, trigger wipes their board. But yeah, that's the biggest concern in the meta right now. But I could definitely see the deck doing a bit better now that Lee Sin's kind of falling off a little bit. Um, Now what I really don't know about is 65% win rate, 23 games on decisive aggro. Or no, yeah, 63% win rate, 19 games, decisive aggro. I dropped this fairly early into the season and haven't gone back to it, and I'm not sure I'm really seeing much to suggest doing it now. Calibrum is kind of broken with Aphelios because I'm trying to think like that's the biggest argument for going decisive aggro over other aggro decks is because its Aphelios matchup is probably fairly decent, but Calibrum kills basically everything in the deck, so maybe not so much. But decisive maneuvers would be good against the Aphelios TF deck, so it's hard to say. But yeah, I'm not particularly inclined to give this deck another shot right now. I think it kind of got outscaled by the meta, and it's just kind of in a rough spot. So I'm personally avoiding it. Now, next up is the only control deck on the list with a positive win record, which probably is funny because I played Vimer for trying to find a control deck that could actually win, and that one ended up negative. But 61% win rate, a whopping 18 games, and that's Peak Control, our first on the grind of this season. I have not played it since. Honestly, I told this to someone on Reddit/YouTube, but yeah, I was a coward. I didn't want to tank the win rate on it, and I wasn't convinced that it was going to be as good. But I've heard that it's still doing fairly well from other people. I've seen it a couple of times on the ladder, and it's done better than expected. But I think I usually have ended up winning. But I've been playing aggro when I hit it, so it's not that surprising. As I mentioned to this person on Reddit, I definitely think adding Withering Wail to the deck right now is the place to be. Withering Wail is high value with so much discard aggro, and that probably would improve the aggro matchup a bit. So definitely, I could see the deck holding up its own, but it would not surprise me if it pulls a lot closer to 50% or even goes negative. But yeah, it did. It did surprisingly well at the start of the season, and I actually think there's still a bit of reason to play it now. To be honest, then from there, this is a really weird one to be leading the 50% win rate, but Demacia Noxus Lucian Riven with 4 games, 50% win rate. I wouldn't play this deck. One of my meta checks semi-recently, I showed off a Riven Quinn deck that's Demacia Noxus, and that's probably where I would go if I was going to play this now, but the big thing is the nerf to Plaza kills this deck. It really does. It kills this deck. You needed that extra health for the Noxus Plaza. Kind of House Spider's a lot worse without that plus to health, I think. So yeah, it's not in a great spot, but somehow it came out at the most games played with a 50% win rate. Similar vein, 50% win rate, Plaza Scouts, 2 games. I would expect the win rate to go up if I played this more, but I only played 2 games. Won the first one, lost the second one. I think the loss came post-nerf, but I'm not 100% sure of that. So, yeah, it's still a solid deck, but the nerf definitely hurt this deck quite a bit. Some people have been like, oh, the Misfortune nerf's not that bad, but I think that actually really killed the deck. Her not having Overwhelm's a pretty big deal, because that was usually how you closed out the game, at least in my experience, was the leveled up Misfortune. So it's like, yeah, you can block it, but it's still going to do damage. So losing that was pretty big. But yeah, the deck still should do better than a 50% win rate. If I had put more time into it, I would have expected it to do so. I still would now, but I could definitely see it being as low as like a 55 or something like that. So yeah, that's where that deck's at. Now into the negative ratings. 43% win rate, 14 games, Vimer Control. Now, I don't know what to say about this. Some people recommended Ballistic Bot to me, and I also tried Sunforger out, and that's where the win rate went below 50%. It was doing better than 50% on the original list and on the grind. So the negative came from the changes afterwards. It's probably better now with Lee Sin getting nerfed, because that was one of the big reasons I ended up dropping it. Was that the whole idea was that we had 3 copies of Hush, we should be good in the Lee Sin matchup, and then I had 2 copies in my starting hand, and I lost to Lee Sin. So yeah, Lee Sin's busted. But with it appearing less on the ladder right now, you probably could do better with Vimer than a 43% win rate. You probably could pull over a 50%, and honestly, it probably would be a lot closer to 50% if I just stuck with the original list. I wouldn't recommend the Ballistic Bot. It's just not good. We really want 3 power units, and losing one of them for Ballistic Bot's just not worth it. So, yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. I think this is a worse showing than the deck deserves. I think it could be better than that. Now something I do think is appropriate: 40% win rate, 5 games. Kalista, Elise, Endure. I picked up the deck because I was tired of losing on other aggro decks, and I'm like, you know what, we're just going to go the old style, and yeah, the deck's just not in a great spot. It's still not. I don't expect it to be now, even after the Hush nerfs, even after the Lee Sin nerfs. I still expect this deck to kind of struggle a bit. There's a lot of Targon decks out there, so I still expect to see Hush, and Hush on They Who Endure just ends the game. It's so game over for you that it's just not even funny. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend the deck. Played it a lot in the past. This is definitely the worst it has felt. So yeah, I would highly recommend shying away from it. Also, an early season deck, NPC Teemo Burn. So that is just all of the burn effects, Boom Crew Rookie, Legion Saboteur, combined with Teemo. I don't believe it had any other mushroom effects in the deck. You're seeing it right now, but I don't have the list on me right this second as I'm saying this, but I don't think it had any other mushroom synergies really. So it was just Teemo or bust. You're just trying to get mushrooms in their deck to serve as extra burn. But yeah, this was just pure burn. Started off with a win, lost the next 3 games, gave up the deck after that. It's cute, but it's definitely one of the worst aggro decks you can go with right now. So I wouldn't recommend that one either. Big disappointments. The 2 0% win rate decks. Both decks deserved a lot better. 0% win rate, 1 game. Demacia, Shadow Isles, Lucian Hecarim. I wish I played more of this. I don't know if it would have been a positive win rate. It's obviously fallen off quite a bit now, but I wish I played it at its height because I really love ephemerals. Before I switched to elusives in the beta season, and I made it to Masters, I was grinding ephemerals. I was grinding Zed Hecarim Ephemeral Aggro. It's a really neat deck. I had really enjoyed it, and it was definitely not making things easy on me because I had like a 52 to 55% win rate on the deck, so I was climbing, but very slowly, and that's why I switched to elusives, and that blew my expectations out of the water. I hit Masters with like a 70-some% win rate, but I do still love ephemerals because it's always been a fun style. Really enjoy it. So I wish I had played more of it, but I played one thing, and my list was definitely not ideal. I think I'm showing you the better list for the meta, but my version had, I think, 2 to 3 of the fearsome Nightfall ephemeral card, and really you didn't need that many, so I kind of handicapped myself a bit. Wish I had played it more because it's ephemerals, but yeah, didn't perform well, and I don't really expect it to be great right now, to be frank, so I'd still probably shy away from it, especially after the Plaza nerfs. And then 0% win rate, 1 game played, Zoe Lee Sin. This should be embarrassing, but what can I say? I did not want to be a part of the problem, so I did not play the deck much, and I only played it once, and I lost that game. I've played a lot of Lee Sin in the past. Actually, I was one of, not to toot my own horns, I was one of the early adopters of the deck, and I was one of the people who pushed that deck before it really took off in the meta. Alan's Q was the person I was watching, and I saw him playing the deck, and I was like, wow, this is really good. So I tried it out, and I don't think I hit Masters off it, but it got me real close, and then I finished off the climb with something else. But then it did very well for me in Masters in that season, so yeah, the Zoe changes requires a lot more experience than I expected. It does change how the deck plays quite a lot. I still expect it to be a really good deck right now. I don't think the nerfs were enough to the deck, so I do expect it to be good, but obviously I didn't really play it. I'm still not really playing it, to be honest. It's just, I don't like what the deck's done to the meta, even though I do normally like combo decks. This is one that I just really don't like what it did to the meta, so I've been shying away from it. It's definitely still a good deck. If you want to play a combo deck, it's one of the best out there right now. I still highly recommend it. But yeah, obviously, I've been avoiding it. So then overall, I had 102 wins and 63 losses, which brings it to a 62% win rate over 165 games, which, looking back, I think is the best overall win rate I've ever had. I think in Season 1, my win rate was probably around 53%. In the past seasons, it's been like 53 to 56%, I think. So this was actually my best season, which is surprising because of how long it took me to get to Masters. But obviously, a lot of stuff in the beginning of the season really slowed me down. I was interviewing with a couple of different jobs. I got that job, and so then I was finishing up my my previous job. I was finishing up with that. Had a lot of work with that, and that job had a lot of built-in overtime. So that's always made it hard to really get enough time in the week to grind and make videos. So I had to make a lot of choices, one or the other. So I've been getting a ton of games in since starting my new job. That's been nice. So that really slowed down my climb. But yeah, it was my best performing season, and I played a decent number of decks. Definitely not my widest variety of decks, but still a fair number of decks. And yeah, 62% is not too bad. Pretty happy with that, to be honest. I was very surprised. That was the thing that caught me off guard the most, I think, as well as the fact of how high Zoe Soul Plaza ended up. Because I kind of felt like that deck was falling off, so the fact that it still ended at 73 was pretty incredible. Yeah, just honestly, I think this season's been fairly good despite really slow and really poor balancing from Riot. The Lee Sin deck needed more answers to it, and it took them too long to address pre-existing problems. Like, Go Hard was the top of the meta for such a long time, Lee Sin was the top of the meta for such a long time, and honestly, I think it'll come back. I don't think it was nerfed enough, so I think it's still in a good spot. I think people are just trending off of it and really like playing Aphelios right now, so that's a bit rough. And also, the big problem with this season is that control has been so bad. We saw an uptick of Anivia there for a bit, but now it seems to be kind of falling off again, as funny as that sounds, and I don't really see it being great into the Aphelios deck. It could be okay, but I don't see it being amazing into that deck, especially with the whole Burblefish win condition can be a bit troubling. But yeah, I could see Anivia control possibly coming back into things, but yeah, that's the big downside with this meta, is that it's not as diverse as some of the previous ones. There really aren't many control decks, if any control decks, you can get away with right now. So that's a little bit disappointing, even though I don't personally like control. It's not my favorite kind of deck. It's not my most comfortable. It's probably my most uncomfortable deck, in fact. I'd say aggro is my most comfortable, followed by combo, and then maybe mid-range. But yeah, I think other than that, the meta's been fairly decent, where you can play mid-range, you can play aggro, you can play combo, so at least there's been that, and it keeps changing a fair bit. I mean, Fizzlusives came out of nowhere, that was really cool, and actually I've really liked what Plaza has done. I know a lot of people were negative on that, but it really created a lot of decks that we wouldn't have seen otherwise, so I think that's really cool. And Aphelios has kind of done that right now, but I could definitely see him getting nerfed or being a problem in the future, so I'm hesitant to say that he was a good addition. But yeah, Plaza was great. I love that. Targon's Peak was so fun to play around with too, so I think on the whole, Cosmic Creations added a lot of good things to the game, and I think the meta's in a decent spot, and we'll have to see where Shurima takes us next expansion, I guess. But yeah, thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed this look at the decks I played and the win rates, and if you did, leave a like, comment below, and subscribe for more videos just like it.